Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming today. So for today, I'm going to talk a bit about my entrepreneurial journey into becoming a baker from when I started as a pharmacist. I'm just going to talk really quickly about pharmacy too for a second, just in case anybody is interested in that as a career path. And so for pharmacy, I studied life science at the University of Waterloo. I graduated from there, and then you do require an undergrad degree to get into pharmacy program and a formal interview process to get into it. And after you graduate, there is a boarding exam, and usually the entire program consists of 4 years, and usually with 1 year of an internship, or you will have co-op terms in between. But a lot of people confuse what pharmacy is, just because a lot of people who see pharmacists just think that they just count pills and that's what they do. But no, the reality is that pharmacy are actually drug experts. So they actually have a lot of role in consulting, in working in hospitals as well as in the industry. Actually, in hospitals, they do a lot of advising and consulting roles to, for example, if the patient has a certain condition, and the most common medication to treat this might be 3 of them, but the pharmacist may have 7 other options available, which may not be commonly known. And so really what they act is as a drug expert for these kind of situations. But anyways, I just want to talk about that very briefly. What I really want to get into is actually my entrepreneurial journey, becoming a baker. So I know I talk a lot about that I say I'm a baker, but in reality, I'm more of an entrepreneur than I really am a baker. Being a baker simply means that I go in and I create cake recipes every day. But the reality is that it's much more than that. So I'll just start from the very beginning. So after I quit my pharmacy job and I decided to open my own bakery, the first thing I had to do was write a business plan, because you need to know, of course, number one, financially, are you going to have enough money to open this business? What are all the costs associated with it? And if you're going to have to take a loan. So that was the first thing on my head. And actually, sorry, I forgot one other thing I'm going to go into before becoming an entrepreneur. For anybody who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur, a lot of the times we think about very traditionally, an entrepreneur is somebody who creates a business or a business model, or some kind of self-sufficient incorporation that ends up being profitable. And that's the final goal of most entrepreneurs. And I think that was a true definition, but today that has really, really changed. Entrepreneurs nowadays really focus on problem solving. They've identified a problem in a community or on a global scale or on a smaller scale, that they think should be solved, or somebody should go out there and create a solution for. And so for some people, they create, they might be part of a healthy organization that researches and trying to find ways to solve food waste in the world, or maybe to find ways to create fresh, clean water for people in third world countries who don't have it. And that can be something on a very global scale. At the same time, there can be small entrepreneurs on a more of a local scale that can be solving issues that are as simple as, waterproof sneakers that are fashionable. So as an entrepreneur, you can really, what it boils down to is that we are problem solvers and we try to find a problem. For me, the reason how Daan Go all started actually came from my own background, because I grew up in Canada. I had both a Western style taste and an Asian style taste towards food. And the one thing I found when I was eating a lot of Western style cakes, especially European style ones, so like maybe cakes from Costco or from Metro, was that they're very sweet, they're kind of heavy, and I found them a little bit dense. And although I liked eating it, I also wanted something a little bit lighter. On the other hand, you also have bakeries like the Chinese bakeries, which have a much, much lighter style. Their cake is usually chiffon based, it's very light, and the cream a lot of times is actually a lactose-free cream, which is great for a lot of Asians, because a lot of Asians have lactose intolerance. So what I aimed to do was to create something that was in between, because I feel like there was an opening there, and I felt like this was something that a lot of people would be interested in, and that's really how Daan Go was born, to take some of the Western style pastries that I really liked, and also some of the Asian techniques and desserts that people really like, to create something that was in between, that I found like people similar to myself would enjoy. So that's how Daan Go started. And then after a while, our mission and values, they grew and they changed, and eventually it turned into our mission being to create something innovative and something new so that people can actually have an experience when they eat it. So that, your birthday becomes more memorable, or your special occasion is more memorable because it's something different, it's something unique. It looks either very beautiful or very cute, or you can even play with it. And that was really my goal. Now, of course, in addition to it being a delicious product. So now I get back to the entrepreneurial journey. I think if problem solving is something that really interests you and something that you really like, then this is a good career path for you. Because when I start talking about entrepreneurial journey, you'll see that being an entrepreneur is completely all about solving problems, because there's no such thing as a day that doesn't have a new problem that pops up. The real question is how you solve it and how do you go about finding a solution for it. So go back to, I was talking about starting the bakery and looking for the financial needs. So after writing the business plan, first of all, I had no idea how to write a business plan. I had to go learn that on my own. Go online, search up sample business plans, figure out what is necessary, what required. And if you don't know, to speak to people who are more knowledgeable about the matter. Then finally, when you actually wrote it, I realized I was okay. I had enough cash. I would have enough money to open the bakery, but not enough for cash. So I still had to borrow a little bit of money for my cash flow. But then came all the other hard parts. Where do I source my equipment? Where do I order my boxes? Where do I hire people? How do I change recipes when things aren't going right? How do I navigate contractors so that when I'm building my bakery, I know that I'm doing the right thing? And so this was a lot of different skills and techniques that I didn't have. You have to have a little bit of basic knowledge of everything in order to open a store, essentially. And so I had to go and find all these things. I had to talk to a lot of different people in terms of financials, in terms of management science, and in terms of the renovation portion. And then I had to figure out how to talk to suppliers to determine whether I wanted to purchase a Canadian-made good, or maybe I wanted to import a piece of equipment instead because I felt like it was more reliable coming from somewhere else. All of it was just research and trying to talk to professionals in the industry so that you could learn more. So all in all, basically about a week before my grand opening, most of my equipment still did not arrive yet because of delays in shipping and various other issues. And my renovations, we were still completing it up to the week before we actually opened. And I remember thinking to myself that I was so stressed out that I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do this anymore. But with the support of my friends and family, I eventually pushed through. And even though when we opened, I was still missing a lot of equipment and missing a lot of things I needed, I still pushed forward and tried to solve each thing one at a time. So once I started, then there was very large demand for our product. And so then new issues came up: hiring, creating a hiring process so that the people who join our company also mimic our mission and value statement. And then on top of that, as we grew as a team, management, who would manage these people, how would they teach and train these people, and what are the operating procedures necessary so that everything will be the same no matter who does it. In the beginning, it was very easy because I had 6 people, and we would all come to work at the same time. We would all leave at the same time. We were all just kind of like a group of friends. There was no such thing as management or human resources. But as we grew, all of these things became problems that became very obvious. I remember one particularly hard time was when my staff quit on me. At the same time, my freezer broke down. And so I had no cake to sell. I had to remake everything from scratch. And so I spent the whole night baking. And during that time, I kept thinking to myself and reflecting on it. And what I came down to was I realized that if I was more experienced, or if I had knew more people, maybe I could have prevented these things. Maybe my hiring processes were better. These people would not have left. And so that was something I need to consider. Maybe if I knew technicians who could fix my freezer right away, I wouldn't have lost so much product. And maybe if I just built the store in a different manner, then this wouldn't have been an issue. And so many things happened that I realized that I needed to learn and improve on. So as my entrepreneurial journey continued, we brought more and more people onto the team. Then we had to figure out how do we build a new kitchen to keep up manufacturing so that we have enough products for everybody to try and eat. And then how can I increase by building more stores? And every single step has its own set of problems, right? Building a kitchen, where do I find a kitchen that is going to be both cheap in rent, but also accessible for us? What are things that I need in order to have a kitchen that I can easily deliver from? And who is going to run this kitchen? And how am I going to fund it? Do I have enough funding? So all of these things just keep popping up, and every single day there's a new problem. I guess what I'm trying to say after all of this, because I can keep talking about, the entrepreneurial journey, my entrepreneurial journey, and all the issues I encountered forever, is that you have to be prepared to constantly be solving problems every day. And if you don't think that that's a career type that's right for you, then maybe you don't want to be an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily have a 9 to 5 day. There will be days where you won't have to do anything realistically because there will be no problem. But there will also be days where you will never stop working because the problem has to be solved right away, and it's up to you to actually solve it. It's nice sometimes not having to worry about those higher level things because, if something breaks down, at the end of the day, when your 9 to 5 ends, then you can go home. But as an entrepreneur and as the owner, you cannot do that. You have to make sure that that gets solved. That being said, I know that my talk was all about passion and career. I don't want to say that being passionate means that you must create or start your own business. That is not what I'm trying to say at all. Being passionate simply means to care about what you're doing and to love it and to want to take it to a new level. It does not mean you need to start your own business. And I want to be very clear about that, because there are many people who are very, very successful, who are absolutely amazing, but they don't necessarily have their own business. That's something completely different. So going back to entrepreneurship, is that there's a lot of different things that make up entrepreneurship, but some of the biggest things, I guess, some of the steps I would say, if you really want to approach it, is to figure out what industry you want to go into. And for a lot of younger students, I know that this is something that's very daunting. You don't really know what industry you want to go into, of course, because you're now just starting your careers. You're just starting to study certain things. That's why my number one tip is simply work hard. And the reason I say that is because if you work hard at something, even if it doesn't have to do with your final goal, you will take something out of it that will carry on and that you can use in your next step. So a lot of people ask me, do you regret studying pharmacy? And no, not at all, because there are techniques, there are skills, there are things that I learned, like empathy and working with customers and working with patients, that I took on with me to become an entrepreneur. And none of these things were wasted because I actually spent the time to learn them and develop these skills. So that's why I said you will never know what is going to happen in the future. But if you work hard now, I promise you, you will take something away that you can use later on. So you may not know your industry, but later on, when you do know exactly what you want to do and you find the industry you want to be in, at the time you will have more skills to use and to draw from. So the next one, of course, is to figure out, like I said before, it's all about problem solving. So you look into the industry that you want to work in. What is an opening that you can utilize or capitalize? So maybe, like I said, for me, it was about cake, but maybe you're talking about, I don't know, something completely different like shoes. Okay, you're thinking about shoes. What is something that's in the market? Maybe we're talking about waterproof shoes. Waterproof shoes are not very beautiful right now. So we try to find a way to create one that's more beautiful. Basically, whatever niche that you decide, or industry that you decide to go in, you have to research it and understand where the opening is. Some people, it's very natural because they work in that industry already and they were lucky enough to actually work in an industry they're passionate about, but maybe they didn't know at the time what exactly the problem they wanted to solve was. And so it becomes obvious and apparent to them when they start working in that industry. And from there, you can capitalize on it. Then the next step, of course, you have to educate and learn about how you can actually solve it. And that's probably the most daunting part, is that when you identify the problem, is what are all of the different skills that you need in order to formally tackle this problem and create a company and business that can handle it. And then once you have that, then finally you can start your business, you can start your entrepreneurial journey and build from there. So those are sort of the key steps that I find are necessary if you're going to start your own business. If there is anything else, I think we can just go to doing questions then, because I don't really have too much more to talk about. I think if people have more specific questions, it will be good, especially if they think they this might be a path that they are interested in undertaking.
And I have some questions.
Yeah.
Okay. I think your entrepreneurship is very impressive with your like problem solving skills, and most importantly is about your attitude. So I think COVID must have brought you a lot of maybe most business owners some challenging times. So can you share your experience in coping with the difficult time?
Absolutely. So when you're an entrepreneur, the difficult times are endless. It's, like I said, always about problem solving, right? But it is very much about your attitude. For example, in the past, I used to be very affected when there was a lot of problems. I would feel them as a lot of anxiety, and I have a hard time solving them. But I changed the way I look at it because it was something one of my good friends who has a very successful bakery told me. He said that a problem is not really a problem if there's a solution that exists. As long as a solution exists, it's not really a problem. You just have to figure out how you can complete that solution in a certain amount of time. And so you simply just prioritize things. And I try not to stress myself out anymore when I see it. Sometimes the solution can take a long time. Sometimes you might not even have the information necessary to solve the problem right away, but it's okay. You have to accept that sometimes you have to set those problems aside and come back to it maybe 2 weeks later or a month later, so that you can approach it again with a pair of fresh eyes and see how can you solve it at that point. But it's always, I mean, it comes down to very, very simply that you don't stress out if there are a lot of problems or a lot of difficult times. You have to keep cool and think about how you can solve each one of them and prioritize them.
Very cool. And we got a question from Owen. What makes you decide to try to be on TV shows?
Yeah, so this is, a lot of people ask me this one actually. So I applied for MasterChef the first time. So just to clarify, I was on MasterChef 2 times. I was on MasterChef the first time in order to I was on MasterChef the first time. This was back when I was still studying pharmacy at university, and I was in my 4th year. And at that time, I was already not too certain. If you listen to my keynote speech, at that time, I was already not too certain if pharmacy was really what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. But I was doing it. But I thought this is a good opportunity to try something new. So I said, let's go for it, right? It was a great opportunity. I didn't know if I was going to get on, but I wanted to try something new. And that's why I said during my keynote speech, it's so, so, so important to put yourself out there and try to do as many different things as possible. Do not be afraid to fail. If when you go out there and you do as many things as possible, one day it will click and it will show you what is it you're passionate about and what you should be chasing. That's actually why. It had nothing with me wanting to be on TV or even competing in competition. I mean, I like competition, but it's incredibly stressful as well. And it takes a lot of preparation, both mentally and physically, to go and compete in one of those things. So it had nothing to do with that. It was just about experiencing. But from there, I actually met so many amazing people. I met the judges, who are huge people in the culinary industry, and I met all of my competitors, who were each and every one of them were just as passionate as I was about food. So meeting all of these people changed my life completely, right? It taught me to be somebody, it showed me their point of view, how they approach food, how I could change the way I could, do it, and how I could actually make it into a viable business. And it gave me a lot of connections. That was the starting point, really, was from me getting on MasterChef. And of course, later on this year, I was on the All-Star season when they invited back a lot of their previous contestants, and this is the season I won. Yeah. So I have a question here from Brian, a direct message, asking how much would I have to prepare to start a bakery on Highway 7 similar to my shop size? And for something like this, it really depends. But for this bakery, because this location, we don't make the actual products in there. We actually just ship everything from our central kitchen in Scarborough over to Richmond Hill. The build out was about 120 to 150,000. If you wanted to have a kitchen in there, your number could easily double to 240 or 250 because you have to purchase a lot of the baking equipment, which is very expensive. So that's why it's very important to see, of course, before you start any business, always write down a business plan. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into and understand all of the risks and repercussions before you do it.
So I think people management is always not an easy thing. So do you have any tips for managing a team?
Yeah, so when it comes to management science, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go about managing people. My particular style is actually about not trying to be too controlling or micromanaging people. I'm a very big believer in hiring people to cover your weaknesses and then really trusting those people to um, actually approach those things and do it. Because you cannot do everything alone. You have to rely on these people. And it's funny, maybe my mentality is right or wrong. I don't know. I will never know. But there are so many people who, especially my parents' generation, who have said, oh, if you trust your staff too much, you know, you might end up getting in trouble later on if they decide to leave you. Or maybe what if your staff go and learn your recipes and leave? Well, I always say those aren't really important things to worry about. The reason is because, number one, the amount of success that we have now would not have been possible without relying on those people, number one. If I did not put my faith in them and they did not put their faith in me so that their efforts don't go to waste, we would not have the success we have now. And number two, if people learn recipes, that's okay. In fact, I don't even care if they leave and take the recipe somewhere else, because my job and my passion is to keep developing these new things. I'm not afraid if I lose one or two of my old recipes. That's not important to me. What's important is the goal and where we're going as a business and how we're transforming.
Question from Owen. You talk about pharmacist training helped you in the development of business skills. It's being pharmacist helped you in other ways, like pharmacist baker is a good gimmick, for example.
Yeah, so obviously pharmacy baker, that was a very interesting one. That was something that somebody mentioned to me when I was first starting the bakery. It's like, oh, being a pharmacist baker is a great gimmick, is a great kind of angle and marketing perspective for you to start selling things. Of course, I didn't really go down that path. I kind of use science in my baking, but I don't heavily say that, you know, this is really what I try to do. But it did help me in other ways though. For example, you know, being a pharmacist and knowing about sterile compounding and sterility issues teaches you, there's basically a kind of a higher level understanding of food and safety, understanding how organisms come to grow and understanding how to keep sterility in your product safe. And then other things in pharmacy. So we do use a lot of stuff that I think is used in pharmacy that is not really traditionally used in baking. So I'll give you an example. If you guys know about fiber supplements in the pharmacy, sometimes people take them like Metamucil or Benefiber. These things are fiber supplements. We actually use them in some of our mousses. And so a fiber supplement is not a laxative. It does not make you go to the washroom. It is simply fiber to say, like plant fiber, like if you eat vegetables, that kind of fiber. But actually this fiber, when ground up, it has great water absorption properties, and it really helps with the freeze-thaw stability, and also lends to create a slightly thicker texture with the mousse. So we use these in order to not have to use more traditional techniques like increasing fat and increasing sugar to get the same effect, because we want to create a healthier pastry that's lighter, but still has the same texture as something that would be heavier normally. And so these are kind of the techniques that we use, or that I use when I develop my recipes, and they're very important to me. Oh, but sorry, wait, I just realized it helped me in the development of business skills. And so, yes, in business skills, actually, yes, it did help as well, because one thing that's really important is customer service. When you do retail, customer service is extremely important. And guess what? You have to learn in any medical professional degree, empathy. How do you deal with patients who are, you know, in pain or are having basically the worst time in their life? How do you deal with these people, and how do you go about helping them? And that is very, very relatable to customer service, and something that I was able to take on. That's what I mean. You don't really know that these things are going to be skills and assets that you can carry on in the future. But if you work hard and you learn the skill, it will be something you can draw on later on.
So thank you. So we have one more question from Brian. If you haven't had become a master chef, would you still start a bakery shop?
Absolutely. 100%, I would still start my own bakery. See, I will always wanted to start my own bakery, even when I was a kid. I always knew I was going to do it. But the difference was that I didn't know if I was going to do it as a career or do it as a retirement option. because it's something I loved and it's something I wanted to do. And so originally my plan was always just to work at pharmacy for a certain number of years and then finally retire and open my own bakery. But going on MasterChef, the only thing that changed is that it gave me the opportunity to do this a lot earlier in my life and actually turn it into a career. But yes, I would always have opened a bakery no matter what.
Also, we have another question. What was your lesson learned in using social media in promoting your business?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. There's a lot of things to be learned, actually. Well, first of all, social media is a very powerful tool, as we know already. In this day and age, social media is basically the most important means of communication between myself and the customer. Social media allows you to not only portray your product, but also the life behind the product. In other words, being able to show off how the product came to be, the hard work that goes into it, and how we end up getting it to the customer. And so, of course, it's extremely important in social media. It is essentially a marketing tool on how you present yourself and how you interact with the customer, because you cannot actually interact with every single customer that comes into your store, especially not as a business owner and you have multiple stores. You can't physically be in all these locations. So I guess the biggest lesson I learned with social media is that it's a tool that can not only help you market and sell more products, but it's also a tool that you can use to reach people in terms of trying to get your message across as a business, because every business has its own story and its own.
What is the requirements to be to start a career like you?
Yeah, so if you're talking about baking in general, I always say that we basically hire anybody from any amount of skill set or any amount of background, because at least for us at this bakery, we believe in training people and trying to help them along their journey. So one of my biggest mindsets is that when people join us at Daan Go, I don't really think about that, oh, I hope they're going to stay forever. I hope they're going to do a fantastic job. It's not like that at all. In fact, my only goal is that while you're here, you learn something, and that's something that you learn, you carry on with you. I don't mind if people leave. In fact, sometimes I'm quite happy if they leave and they go and discover something else they want to do. My only goal is to help them on this journey, and I hope they take that journey seriously, though. The only people we don't want to have are people who don't have that mentality, people who don't, who are just there for the sake of being there and they don't really know what else they want to do.